If you want to talk a little bit about Hebrew and Israelis, I'll tell you. You know which language the Torah has never been translated to? To Hebrew.
Torah's never been translated to
Torah
Hebrew.
has never been translated to Hebrew. I remember years ago we were in New York somewhere and there was a Torah reading on Shabbos, and a good Israeli friend of mine wasn't religious. He comes to me after the Torah reading and he said, Rabbi, lo havanti klum. I didn't understand a word.
All right, so I want to welcome everyone to SoulWords Studios. We're doing a little informal interview podcast with somebody that I just ran into randomly yesterday at the Isle. Many people know that we're here in the Five Towns, which is, Baruch Hashem, less than 15 minutes from the Isle, and I'm there quite often. So yesterday it was Chof Dalet Tevis, and I was sitting in the back, and Rabbi Asi Spiegel, now of Tzfas, came over to me and said, you know what you told me? Do you remember what you told me?
Remind me.
You said, I'm your biggest fan.
Oh, that's right. I did.
I said, you're an Israeli. How can you be my fan? I speak for an American audience. You don't even, that's not your world. But you said, no, I'm your biggest fan. I said, you know what? I'm not going to argue with you. But you know what? Come to my studio and we're going to do a podcast.
Okay, here we are. Should I tell you why I'm your biggest fan?
Yeah, convince me. Yeah.
Well, it started actually with Tanya. You put a CD, but the map of the Tanya and the CD.
The map of Tanya is right behind you, by the way.
Oh, yeah? Oh, there it is. There it is. So, but I got to the map after I listened to the CD, and I learned Tanya all my life. And like many other people, I was always challenged by, you know, the makeup of the chapters, right. What comes after what. And when I listened to your CD lecture, I was very impressed. And since then, I follow you. And, you know, I'm not in America, so I don't see all the magazines and everything. But I'm also a fan because the amount of content you release. I admire your output. It's amazing.
Well, Hashem, that's nice to say. And the truth is, I wish I put out more because Mashiach's not here yet. So he's still, you know, the Baal Shem Tov had Aliyas HaNeshama. He went to heaven. He saw the soul of Mashiach. He said, when are you coming? He said, when your teachings are spread out. So I guess.
Okay. Well, we all got to do more. So. I agree.
Speaking of chasidus and spreading out the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, and Pnimiyas HaTorah, the inner dimensions, the secrets of the Torah, you know the word that the Baal Shem Tov is, you know the word Bereish Gli?
Right.
Okay.
Rashbi.
This is where I'm heading.
Right.
Why don't you say the word for me and then take me where I'm trying to go? I'm trying to basically from Baal Shem Tov to Miron.
Okay. So so Miron, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is really the author of the Zohar, as we all know, but is the root, is the shoresh, the root of all Kabbalah and mysticism, and we believe very strongly that our Rebbeim are the continuation. You know, Bereish Glei, it says over there that the Jewish people are coming out of exile with uplifted head, right?
Right.
And the Baal Shem Tov says, uplifted head is with the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Bereish, Aramaic. It turns out you could read it also as Rashbi. And also the Rebbe says you could also read it as Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Bar Shalom Dovber, right? Which is the Frierdiker Rebbe.
Or Ben Shnei Nosara.
Right. It could be the Rebbe Rashab, right? And also the Rebbe Rashab.
Yeah.
So in that very word, we have basically the secret code, which is the teachings of the Zohar.
Okay, so you have this word, Bereish, which is an Aramaic word. It's the Targum Onkelos of this pasuk. B'yad Rama, the Jews left
with the upper hand.
With the upper hand, right. And by the way, speaking of Targum Onkelos, so Bereish Glei Bereish is a head.
Right.
Yad Rama is a hand.
Right.
But when you translate, I think like the Rambam told Ibn Tibbon, when you translate, don't be so literal.
That's right. That's
right?
actually a good example.
Okay, and I want to talk about this actually, what it means to translate chasidus. But at any rate, so I want to get back to this idea of translating chasidus and what it means to translate it for Americans and what it means to translate it for Israelis. But at any rate, this word Bereish, which is an Aramaic word, it has the letters Beis Reish Yod Shin, which is the letters Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, which is also Rabbi Yisrael ben
Baal Shem Tov,
Yisrael ben Baal Shem Tov, right?
Or Ben Sara.
Or Ben Sara,
right.
Right. Works both ways.
Right.
Or You said the Rebbe mentioned. Oh, well, there's another. We're getting a big one. You're at Tzfas.
Right.
Tzfas is the Arizal.
Right. But is he in the acronym?
He's also in the Sikha Yitzchak ben Shlomo.
Oh, that's right. This is
Rabbi
correct.
Yitzchak ben Shlomo is also the same Beis
Amazing.
Reish Yud Shin. And then the Rebbe adds that somebody told him Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak ben Shnei Sara or Shalom Dovber also
the Rebbe,
fits
the
the
Frierdiker Rebbe, right?
the Frierdiker Rebbe fits the formula. Okay, so now we got a lot of things out on the table. Miron, Baal Shem Tov, Rashbi, Arizal, Tzfas. Put it all together. Now you live in Tzfas,
I do live in Tzfas.
but you told me you can see Miron from your backyard.
I can see Miron from my porch, but I also go to Miron almost every day. 4 times a week I give a chasidus class in Miron, and we also have an evening kollel there. So we have an evening study program in Miron every day, which is incredible. It's like the last 6-7 years, that's what I do every evening. And
What kind of people come to learn chasidus?
The people there are mostly religious Jews who come. But for the chasidus shiur that we have, it's a variety of people. It's some what we call Polish Hasidim, some Kippas Ruga, modern Orthodox Jews. There's a variety of people, and some Lubavitchers, And right,
That's the toughest
they
crowd.
They even come, and also a lot of people come to daven there, and they don't come to our program. We have a unique kollel.
And then they end up getting
Coming to the
getting
shiur.
pulled in.
Or hearing a class during a Mariv.
You mentioned to me when I saw you yesterday that Miron is the second most visited holy site in Eretz Yisrael.
That's right.
That's very surprising.
Yes. No, why is it surprising?
I wouldn't have guessed it.
Okay, so well it is, because the Western Wall obviously is the first place.
Fine.
And after the Koisel, basically Miron is most popular. It's been like this for years. However, I would say in the past 5-10 years, it has grown tremendously. A lot of people come for Shabbos. In Israel, they have what's called zimmers. They have like these rooms they rent. I would guess, and I think I'm pretty close to the right number. There's about 5,000 rooms to rent in Miron.
That's wild.
There's maybe 300 families living there.
Wow.
But 5,000 beds, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, it's huge. On Shabbos, it's huge over there.
So it's interesting. I saw you yesterday at the Oil Chabad Lubavitch, the Tziyun of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And you told me you've been around. I said, where are you staying? You staying in Crown Heights? I said, no, I'm staying right here.
Right.
I'm staying right here in Cambria Heights, not Crown Heights, in Cambria Heights. And it occurred to me that, okay, so you're in Miron almost every day. When you're coming to New York, you're staying at the Oil. How would you compare? They're both places. It's interesting because they're both places where they're significant because of a burial site, and yet they're both full of life. But how would you compare the?
Okay, well, I have to say before comparing, I would say you mentioned I live in Tzfas, so the Arizal, which we just talked about.
Yeah.
The Arizal is the one who brings to light this idea that hanging out at a cemetery.
Yeah, what's up? It's so morbid. It's so weird.
I know. It sounds strange.
Yeah.
Initially, but I gotta say, for people like us, we live there. We do it on a regular basis. It's something very, very special because we do believe that the soul of the righteous person stays around the burial place, and when you come there, of course, you dive into Hashem. You learn Torah Hashem, that's obvious. We don't, God forbid, dive into the tzaddik. But just being in close proximity of where the tzaddik is buried is similar to being in close proximity to the tzaddik when the tzaddik is alive. And I got to tell you, there's an expression, baduk umenusa. It's like, at least for me, So that's from the Arizal. The Arizal is the one who talks about coming to the Kivrei Tzaddikim. And so to compare it, it's hard to compare,
right?
Because I had the fortunate schus to be by the Rabbi when the Rabbi was here in the world, alive and everything. So it's different. Come to the Rabbi, I have movies in my mind to connect with. Where in Rashbi, obviously this is almost 2,000 years ago, so it's a different relationship with the tzaddik, with Rashbi himself. But if we talk about, again, like I said, being in close proximity, I'll tell you what it is. It's very simple. Let's say you learn Kabbalah, you learn Zohar, you learn Chasidus. It also makes a difference where you study it. It makes a difference when you study it. You can't compare a Shabbos morning class when you're all relaxed to a midweek busy class.
Okay.
The time makes a difference.
Okay.
The mood makes a difference, but location apparently makes a difference too. Yes.
So it's not just the what or even the when. It's the
It's
where.
the location. Yes, and
So you're saying sitting down and learning Zohar in Miron by Kever Rashbi is different than.
it is, and
Really?
I'm saying something very personal, but I want to say it because it's important.
What are you here for? We
No,
want to hear
exactly,
personal.
exactly.
We want personal.
Exactly.
Give
So-
us personal.
I've been doing it for a little bit more than 6 years, going to Miron every day, and I feel in my mind that, yes, those ideas are much easier to connect with. It's not even an intellectual thing. It's not even just that understanding better. It's connecting with it and feeling that it actually has relevancy to me and it kind of enters my being, not just my mind. Yes, absolutely.
For those who haven't studied Zohar, I don't think relevancy is one of the first words that people think of because it's very esoteric. It's hard to decode it and to make sense of it.
Right.
Okay, it's
No, relevancy, when I use the word relevancy, I mean that you feel that the teaching is actually saying something to you. Like
Right.
I read something and then it stays in my mind for a while to process it. That's what
Can I
I mean.
challenge you for something?
Sure.
Could you tell me something from Zohar and you could explain it to me in everyday language? A concept?
A concept? Sure. Concept we're all familiar with, but I'll just say this. Before Zohar, we started with saying the Rashbi, Arizal, and the Rabbeim.
Yeah.
So it's not just studying Zohar in Rashbi.
Okay.
It's studying of any chasidus, any
Right.
pnimius
So
of
Zohar
Torah.
and everything that comes from it.
Right. So
Right.
it doesn't have to be just straight Zohar, which
Right.
not everybody could study.
Right.
But let me tell you something about the Zohar before I give you the example. The Zohar is treated by most people as, like you just said, as an esoteric book, which is very hard to understand.
Right.
It's not completely true. It's not completely true. Zohar is actually midrash, and midrash has in it many stories and many anecdotes and many statements that could be understood. For example, there's a story in the Zohar, or there's a mashal, like how would you say, a parable in the Zohar, that the king was upset at the queen, and he was so upset at her, he shouted, he screamed, and he kicked her out of the palace. And later, he had second thoughts about it, and he was looking for her, and he was searching, and he found her. Is crying somewhere in the mud, and very depressed. And the king talked to the queen, and he invited her back to the palace. Okay, and the Zohar says that this is a parable for God and the Jewish people, and God was upset at us and exile and everything. But at the end of days, the way it's going to be is no matter how we're going to be, and the Jewish people, I don't just mean the entire Jewish people, I also mean every single individual Jew. Comes the Zohar and says, and this is an example I'm giving, like you asked, even if you feel depressed and in the mud and crying, guess what? At the end of days, it's going to be the king himself. God himself is going to approach every Jew and bring you back into the palace. So, for example, this is a statement or a story from the Zohar that anybody could relate to. Mm-hmm. I think, by the way, that this is the main message, if I can say that.
Yeah,
But the main message of the Zohar, which turns to be the main message of the Rebbe, I think, is that our job is to turn darkness into light. It's in Tanya. This is all. It's all about.
Miriru Lemiska.
Exactly. And
Right, which is from Zohar. Right.
Exactly.
Right, which is why it's in Aramaic.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. There's a shtickle. What is that from? In Perek Yud, chapter 10, when it's talking about the different types of tzaddik, the different levels of tzaddik.
Right.
Is that a piece of Zohar there?
Yeah. It says that in Eichel of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, there's the story.
Yeah.
There's a story of Rabbi
So
Chia.
that's the level in heaven where Rashbi.
Right. That's like the
resides.
space of Rashbi.
Right.
And the space of Rashbi is only a person who turns darkness into light is allowed in. Now, again, in the Zohar, when you read it, it's a mystical story of Rabbi Chia crying and going up to heaven. When you read it in the Zohar, it sounds unrelatable to a common person, but that's exactly the point. If we do get into the concept that we also could process the idea of turning darkness into light, guess what? We just entered the chamber of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai.
So what? Okay. So when you turn darkness into light, you have entered the chamber of
Rabbi
Shimon
Shimon.
ben Yochai. Okay. So what does turning darkness into light mean? Because that's poetry.
It is. It is. It sounds like a slogan, but let's break it apart.
Okay.
Let's break it apart to our daily life.
And don't tell me lahapech choshech leor.
Leor. No. We talked about relevancy. You caught me on that word. Let's make it relevant. It's very simple. In principle, it's simple. Darkness is when I find myself in negative thoughts. Somebody just humiliated me. We had a conversation with somebody and they just gave it to me, okay?
So you're talking about internal darkness, subjective darkness.
Yes. I'm talking about in the inner journey. And in the inner journey, if I'm able to rethink my own thoughts and say, you know what? It can't be that this person just humiliated me. There must be some message from above. And instead of getting all upset and angry and wanting to kill the guy, God forbid, I'm working on myself to say, no, there must be some light in there. I can't just treat this as darkness. It's a lot of inner work. It's very, very hard. But that's how I look at it, And if I do that, if I'm able to fight those thoughts, or at least I try to, you know what? At least I try. At least I know that it could be done. Even if I can't do it, I'm already getting closer to the chamber of Rabbi Shimon because I'm going on that stream of consciousness.
I love that concept. So when you reframe a negative experience, and either you find the good or at least you embrace the idea that there must be a good, you're entering the chamber of Rabbi Shimon.
I think so, yeah. I think when...
That's cool.
Yes, it is. It's super cool.
Yeah.
Because once you enter the chamber of Rabbi Shimon, you're not alone.
Oh, my gosh.
You have some help from above. You're like, okay,
wow.
You're in the club, okay. I think that's how it feels.
Wow. Wow, that's good. That's good stuff. Okay. So we were talking a little bit about, that's good, very good stuff. Okay. We were talking a little bit about we spent Targum Onkelos and translating chasidus and English and Hebrew.
Right.
Okay. So I grew up in America. I'm an American boy. My mama lashon is English. By the way, my favorite, you sent me yesterday a letter of the Rebbe in English. My favorite thing in the world is the Rebbe's letters in English. And I don't mean letters the Rebbe wrote in Hebrew or Yiddish that were translated in English because that's a translator. But when the Rebbe's own English, and by the way, a lot of people don't understand. If the Rebbe signed a letter, it doesn't matter what language it was in. Of course, the Rebbe dictated. Okay, let's back up a little bit. Even letters in Hebrew or Yiddish, the Rebbe dictated.
Right. And
the secretary would give them back, to give the letter back to the Rebbe would review and edit and change. And if even the slightest punctuation mark was off, the Rebbe would change it. Right. Okay. And if the Rebbe signed it, that means it's the Rebbe's words and punctuation, and everything is the Rebbe's, including in English. And there are hundreds of pages of documents that we have of the Rebbe making very, very meticulous edits in English. So it wasn't like, the Rebbe wasn't so particular. A lot of people think that. No, if the Rebbe signed a letter, it's in English. It's the Rebbe's English down to the spelling, down to everything, down to a comma. Right. All right. So I love English letters of the Rebbe because that's my nefesh bamas, my animal soul speaks English. So, okay, I know English, and not just the language of English, but the American mindset. I think I understand it. This is where I come from. This is what I get. This is my beer. Okay. You know who I never understood?
Who?
Israelis.
Okay.
What makes them tick? Where are you from?
I'm from Israel. I'm born in Israel. My parents are born in Israel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Second generation.
I'm even fifth generation Israeli from one grandmother, believe it or not.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very, very Israeli.
Okay. So what's up with the Israelis? Like what? They're so strange.
That's a big question. But let me tell you, before what's up with Israel, I just have to insert this.
Yeah.
Because I know maybe I'm going to blow your mind. I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
Even though I'm Israeli and Hebrew is my first language
and
the whole thing.
Yeah.
I love the Rebbe's letters in English more than his letters in Hebrew.
Why?
How do you like that?
Why?
Why? Because in English, I feel that the Rebbe is coming to the culture and to American mind a lot more than I feel it in the Hebrew, because Hebrew is a different language, and in Hebrew, even if the Rebbe would write modern Hebrew, there's still rabbinic Hebrew in there. Okay, so it keeps a certain religious tone to it.
Okay,
and you can't get away from it, right? But in English, the modernity of the Rebbe, the look of the Rebbe in the modern world comes out much stronger to me. That's If you want to talk a little bit about Hebrew and Israelis, I'll tell you, it's very hard. Here, I'll throw you another good line. I think it's a good line.
Okay.
You know which language the Torah has never been translated to? To Hebrew.
Torah's never been translated to
Torah
Hebrew.
has never been translated to Hebrew. It's a fact.
Okay.
You know, I remember years ago we were in New York somewhere, and there was a Torah reading on Shabbos, and a good Israeli friend of mine who wasn't religious, I invited him for Shabbat, and he comes to me after the Torah reading. He's like, Rabbi, lo havanti klum. I didn't understand a word. And he told me, how could it be? I'm Israeli. They read the Torah, and I have no idea what it says. It's like, I mean, obviously he got a lot of words in there, but he couldn't make up sentences. So that tells you a lot.
So
about...
they have translations of Chumash. I'm not talking about like King James, Lahavdil. I'm saying there are authentic translations of the 5 books of Moses in every language, any language you want, right? Okay. But not Hebrew.
Except in Hebrew.
Because the Israelis, they tell, just read the original.
Yes.
Lama Nigoda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they should have it in Hebrew. That's my point.
Right.
My point is that it's not available yet. They didn't make that translation yet.
Yeah, so how would you do it? Have you thought about it?
Yeah. Actually, I tell you, I am involved a little bit in translating from English into Hebrew. You know, the book Daily Wisdom.
Yeah.
So Daily Wisdom is a really popular book in English. I am the editor of the translation into Hebrew. Okay, we're holding in volume 3 right now. And we're definitely planning to do the same thing for the Chumash. The Daily Wisdom is actually taken from the Chumash edition, which is a full edition of, and we're thinking about doing it in Hebrew, actually, and we're working on it. I mean, we're not yet there, but it's so strange that we're looking into English, think about the Hebrew. It's complicated, you know, you're asking me about the Israelis. Maybe give me some more direction where to take it. It's a big question.
Yeah,
what do you mean, what's the story of the Israelis? I mean, I kind of know what you mean.
It confused me, because here's the thing. I can't figure out what the Israelis... honestly, I'm just telling you how I experience it. I can't tell if they're super skeptical or super like overly believing. Like, because I see the both extremes. Like on one hand, like super cynicism, they don't believe anything, and then you see the other extreme of like, without questioning, in Chabad everything's intellect, just simple, like but like almost zealous, like they just buy it, or I don't know. It's with the Russians, I see it's like they're skeptical, but I understand why they're skeptical because the communists burnt out any level of trust. But then when they buy in, they're very, very strong. Like they're very stubborn because they're very stubborn also. So once they buy in, then they're very stubborn about it. So that makes sense. I kind of figured that out. I can't figure out the Israeli mentality.
Okay, well, it's a big topic, you know.
I want to know about it.
But I'll tell you. I think a key element in the Israeli story, and I hate to say it, but I have to, because I think it's true. The Holocaust.
Really?
Yes. Israel, the state of Israel, is actually, unfortunately, a product of the Holocaust. That's the greatness of the state of Israel, and that's the problem of the state of Israel.
Okay.
Because basically the Jews after the Holocaust went to Israel, and the ones who, after the Holocaust, didn't want to do anything with Judaism, didn't want to have anything to do with Judaism, they didn't make it to Israel. Some Jews, many Jews, the message of the Holocaust, unfortunately for them, was assimilate and forget about the whole thing. Those guys didn't make it to
So they went to America or whatever. And
they went wherever they went, right?
They're gone.
They're gone. The ones who went to Israel, because let me give like a big credit to the Zionists. Okay, I want to do it, even though I don't want to say I'm anti-Zionist. That's it's a pretty harsh term.
But you're non-Zionist.
I am a non-Zionist. Thank you for helping me here.
Okay,
but
creating new words.
Right. Okay, it's a nice word.
By the way, in America, well, I think the internet did this to everyone. Everyone's polarized. So I'll tell you a joke. I don't even tell me if this is an Israeli joke, because to my knowledge, this is an American joke about Israelis. Okay. An American was flying on El Al. And the Israeli flight attendant comes over and says, "Would you like dinner?" So he says, "What are my options?" She says, 2 options. You eat or you don't. Okay? So that's an American joke about like Israeli
mentality.
Yeah, very tough. But in America, it's like you have 2 options. It's like R and D, right? Everything is polarized. So it's like You're Zionist or anti-Zionist? Maybe it's more nuanced than that.
It is. It's way more nuanced.
Way more nuanced. Okay.
I grew up in a Zionist home, by the way, so I'm very familiar with it. Let's say that today I like the term that you offered me. It makes me feel good about it. I'm a non-Zionist, but I want to give a huge credit to Zionism.
Okay.
Let me tell what it is. And again, this is the advantage and the disadvantage at the same time.
Okay.
In Europe, prior to World War II, prior to World War I, the Enlightenment movement pushed assimilation, basically. That's what it did. So the Zionists with those Jews they wanted to be modern, but they did not want to kill their Judaism. They want to remain Jewish with a strong Jewish identity, but not religious.
Right.
It's those people post the Holocaust where they created the state of Israel.
And that's Israeli culture.
Yes, and they have a lot of Jewish pride.
Right.
They're very proud to be Jews, but they're very upset. They never treated the anger. We're going into maybe a different channel.
I want to hear this.
Trauma and therapy and all that. You know a lot about it, right? There's a lot of pent up anger about God, about the world, and so I think that the issue, and I'm talking about current events, what's going on today, is that the narrative of the State of Israel is post-Holocaust. By the way, when they bring, let's say, the Chancellor of Germany or whatever, they come to Israel, what did they take them? To Yad Vashem.
Okay.
That's the message, that Holocaust should never happen again.
Right.
And that is not a good enough.
As opposed to, they take them to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, as opposed to
Miron? Take him to the Temple Mount. Okay. I mean, I know I sound radical here, but so what? As opposed to tell him to the wall and tell him here's where the temple was, or as opposed to, as opposed to talking to them about the vision of the future of Israel. Where is the vision of the future? It's all about let's not let whatever happened in the past, let's not let it happen again. So, but back to the regular Israeli, without all the big words, I think that's a key way to understand Israelis. Israelis are very Jewish in terms of Jewish pride and Jewish identity, protecting Jews. Jews shouldn't be killed, Jews shouldn't be hurt, But in terms of you're talking spirituality, hello, you're talking about God. We have a long cheshbon with God. You want to speak to me about God? I'm still upset about my grandfather, We're in America. We're in America. The secularism of America didn't come from anger. People came here, then they had to work on Shabbos. That's why they're secular, not because they have anything.
It's almost like in America. It's like, you want to talk to me about God? Okay, I'm not familiar with the topic, but it's a clean slate.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me, ignorant. We don't have a relationship.
It's not loaded. Israel, it's a
triggering.
Exactly.
It's a trigger.
It's a trigger.
And you're saying even now, where you're talking about grandchildren of survivors, it's still loaded. You're saying it's unprocessed trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Untreated trauma. And that's why I use the word narrative. Because that's what they teach in the schools. And that's what, the most religious event in Israel is Yom HaShoah.
What do you mean by most religious?
Meaning that it's like a religious ritual. You have to stand and quiet, and there's like protocol. Religious means that you go to shul. Right. There's things you have to do.
So the thing that Israelis take the most seriously,
right?
Because Israelis they like their late sonas, they like to scoff. I think it's part of the cynicism,
right?
But you're saying Yom HaShoah is not a joke. Everyone will take it seriously.
Yes.
Or you're saying the most
generally, yeah. Because that is where the identity is expressed. We all agree that we don't want the Shoah to happen again. There we have agreement. There we have an identity, and that affects a lot of the outlook of religion, because once Shoah is your basis of your relationship with the spirituality or with God or with your own identity, it's a mess.
Why?
Because the Shoah is a mess. I mean, your starting point is like, I can't believe God did this. I can't believe the world is so cruel and evil. And to start there, like you said before, the American is a clean slate. It's like, okay, let me hear what you have to say. Israeli is already loaded and triggered if you say the word God. The word God doesn't appear in the Declaration of Independence of Israel.
Right.
The State of Israel.
Right. It's one of the
complaints. It says the Rock of Israel. Rock of Israel. That was like the compromise.
Right.
The compromise. The Rock
Ambiguous,
of Israel.
whatever you were.
Yeah, they did not say God so and so,
Right.
such and such. They didn't.
Right.
They couldn't even say the word God a few years after the Holocaust. That's how harsh the wounds. That's how
You're saying they couldn't bring themselves to say it.
couldn't bring themselves to say it exactly because it was like God. Hello, slow down. Don't talk about God. Let's talk about Jews, state.
You talked about before about turning darkness into light.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things we learn in chasidus is that there's no such thing as a setback. There's no such thing as loss. Everything is progress. Everything is forward motion because it's all part of a process. So even the gullus itself, the exile, is not a deviation. It is part of the process forward to geula, to perfection. Okay. And the more you learn chasidus, the more you learn this. And in the microcosm, in your personal life, even when, God forbid, you have a moral failing. But that's not, if you look at a snapshot, you're going away from God. But if you look at it as a movie, if you look at the whole process, you're going toward God. Even when you're going away from him, you're going toward him, right? You can't get away from God, right? So everything is always moving forward. So here's my question, deep philosophical question for you. Apparently, Hashem created an entire people, or rather, by people, I don't mean the Jewish people are the people, but a segment, a subculture called the modern Israeli, which is a lot of people, millions of people. And they have a culture. And I'm not saying that it's a uniform, that everyone, and you're not implying that either, that there's one culture, but generalizing, there is a certain prevailing culture. And the way you categorized it is a culture of unprocessed trauma, a culture of, I still have very real issues with God. I want my Jewish identity, but I can't stand the religious aspect of it. So Hashem created, and I'm not getting to why did Hashem make the Holocaust. I'm not, but I'm saying the reality is now post-Holocaust, Hashem made millions of people who belong to this culture, which you just characterized as people who have this complex relationship, very complicated relationship with God. It has to be part of the plan. It has to be a good thing. It has to be ultimately a way of bringing us closer to redemption. So how is the creation of modern Israeli culture part and parcel of the unfolding of the process of the ultimate redemption?
All right, that's like a bombshell question. But I want to say, before I answer it, I want to say just little reservations about what I said before.
Okay.
What I described before is mostly the official state of Israel, culture. It's not.
Is this like in Iran, where you have the government and the people?
Well, that's a pretty interesting comparison. No, but I want to say it's like a mix because it's there. I'm not taking back what I said, but I do want to say that
you're describing the establishment,
right? The establishment and the past view, which is changing now. So a lot of young Israelis are more open to God and are more open to Judaism and to the Jewish culture and everything. There's still a lot.
Do you think that's why Israelis get more religious when they go to America?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
they feel Jewish. Israelis feel Jewish. You know what? Many of them claim they're more Jewish than me and you, because they go to the army, they defend the Jewish people, and you know what? They got a point.
They vote
sometimes.
with their feet.
Right. There's something amazing about what they do. I can't dismiss it. Right. So they feel very, very Jewish. And they come to America. Suddenly, there's no Hebrew, there's no community, there's no army. We're not fighting a shared enemy.
Right.
Got to go to shul. Got to do something Jewish. Send my kids to some Jewish kindergarten, something. Go to Chabad for Shabbos.
Right.
That's why outside of Israel, Israelis, many of them, not all of them, many of them also.
But I was saying something additional. What you're describing, I'm familiar with. That when they have no other way of expressing their Jewish identity, so then they would find religion.
Right.
But I'm saying something else based on what you told me earlier, that America is sort of the blank slate. Is it possible when the Israeli leaves Israel and he goes to America, in a way, he sort of gets a blank slate.
Right. Because
Like, it's okay to meet God here because there's no history, there's no bad blood.
there's also another point which I really don't want to talk about so much.
Talk about it.
But in Israel, religion is part of the politics.
Okay.
And that doesn't exist here. At least not for the Israelis. It may exist somehow for America, but it's very, very different. So here, when you go to shul, you don't feel that the rabbi is going to convince you why you have to vote the way he thinks.
Right.
So it's a different ball.
I want to talk about that real quick.
Okay.
Because I think there's a huge danger of that happening in America, and I've been warning my colleagues about this.
I agree with you.
It's a big danger. I spoke about before the polarization. And rabbis, I got to tell you something. When you get up there and you say a thinly veiled regurgitation of your favorite YouTube pundit's political editorial, you're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do it.
I agree with you.
A shul has to be a place where a Jew coming from any type of background can come and leave their politics at the door and just connect on a Jewish level.
Absolutely. You know, I was a shliach in Oregon. This is another chapter in my life.
It's a very political, I mean...
Yeah, very liberal,
very liberal,
left-leaning, whatever those names are. It was very challenging to be there. But, you know, and my family, my wife's family is from Northern California. I go there very often, and they're not all religious there at all, you know. So, yes, I totally agree with you. I think there's a big problem going on because we tend to get the circle that's closer to us, and that's the kind of the right-wing politics, Republicans,
Right.
Trumpy, whatever the whole,
right?
Yeah.
Look,
got to be careful. We got to be careful.
There's no question that if you represent organized religion in today's political climate, the more conservative-leaning people are low-hanging fruit.
Right.
Okay, but let me just talk about this. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, Amen, that today Chabad is so established and with shuls, and it's almost like normal. It's almost like a part of normal Judaism, mainstream Judaism. But when I was a bacher, a lot of it was just guerrilla. Like Judaism going out on the street, Mivtzoyim, standing on the street corner. Excuse me, sir, are you Jewish? Excuse me, are you Jewish? And we love dealing with those people who were like antagonistic to religion, the most secular, the most, and that's to us, that's what it was all about. And I feel like I'm just going to editorialize for a second. We got so comfortable with, now we're surrounded with people who don't push back, people who are pro-religion, pro-traditional values. And it's like, come on, it's not even fun. Like it's not a Shabbos table without somebody screaming atheistic things at me. And how can you believe that? And you're so backward. Those are the conversations we used to love. And now it's almost like, I don't want to talk to those guys.
Absolutely. I live in Tzfas. I lived there for 11 years. And when people ask me, how do you like Tzfas? I say, I love Tzfas, but where are the secular Jews? I mean, I want to hang out in Tel Aviv more for the same reason that you say. I am trained by the Rebbe,
Right.
I love everybody.
Right.
I want to talk to everybody. I don't want to be surrounded by religious Jews. I mean, I love religious Jews, but give me some color, give me some challenge, I give a shiur in Miron. It's like, come on, guys, tell me that I'm wrong,
Right.
Let's just argue. I totally agree with you. I think that it shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't fall into this political trap, You said low-hanging fruit, We should be very careful. It's hard. It's also, it's a big topic, but I agree with you.
You talk about Zionist, anti-Zionist, and now non-Zionist. There was a great story that I saw a few years ago that the shluchim, University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is also very liberal. I mean, I don't know how you compare it to Oregon, but Madison is like liberal, Madtown. Yeah. And there was a story about a girl who was very close to Chabad and to the shluchim there, to the Matasovs, and she was a Jewish girl, the president of the anti-Zionist club on campus. Mm-hmm. And I read that and I said, that's as it should be. Because she's Jewish and she has a place we're a family. And whatever her politics are, to the contrary, let her politics be the most extreme politics. If we don't have a place for someone like that, then are we a family?
I'll respond with a story from Oregon. When I came to Oregon, so I met a Jew, a Yid by the name Gary. He was a really good guy. I remember this very clearly. We were sitting on a bench somewhere in a park, and he tells me, I want to tell you, Rabbi, I don't give a penny to anything relating to Israel. I said, why? He said, because when I see the picture of the Israeli soldier with a gun, I just can't handle it. And he gave me his whole speech. And you know what I told him? I told him, listen, Gary, politically, I think we don't vote for the same party. But spiritually, I totally understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. You know why you can't stand the picture of the soldier with the gun? Because you know very deeply inside your neshama that Jewish people should fix the world with other tools. And with that, I agree with you. I'm also in agreement with you. And you know what? He loved it. And we became very good friends. We gave money to Chabad. And he was telling me, his friends are telling him, like, how come you go to Chabad? I said, because I love the rabbi, the way he said it. But it's true. It wasn't like a line I came up with. I could disagree with somebody politically, but I could appreciate the other opinion. It comes from, all those liberal ideas, they come from being very spiritual, very sensitive. Could be that technically we disagree, but I don't have to X another person, cancel culture. I'm not, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think that what's lacking is the nuance.
Right, and that is something I learned from the Rebbe.
Nuance.
Yeah, that
yeah,
you could disagree, and still be friends, and still find a point of agreement, and not just focus on what takes us apart, But we started with speaking chasidus in Hebrew, right?
Yeah.
So. It's very interesting, I listened to a talk by the Rebbe yesterday. It's one of my favorite talks. I listened to it before, and it's about translating chasidus.
Okay.
The Rebbe says there a line that translation is not just the words, but it's actually the getting into the mind of the listener, the type of life that they live, the culture that they are in, and trying to fit the ideas of whatever you're translating into their world.
Okay.
And I saw it when I worked on translation. I'm not a translator, I'm an editor. Mm-hmm. So I would get the materials, and my job is basically to make it better,
Make it read like it was written in that language originally. That's the trick of translation.
I know. It
shouldn't read like a translation.
Right.
It should look like it was written in that language.
Right. It's a very hard thing, and that's the work, So that's my leading thought when I work on those kind of texts. That's what it is. I want somebody who is not steeped in rabbinic literature, not steeped in Hasidic literature, but somebody who reads modern Hebrew, and somebody that they watch TV, they watch movies, they watch the news. That's the language that they speak. I want to insert into that language the idea that is translated.
I wonder if you could, this is probably not possible, but for a real American like me, give me an example of a translation choice that you made to get it just right for the Israeli ear.
That's a tough one. I don't see how I could pull that one off.
Is there something that...
I'll give you an example of something that just popped into my mind. It's a very little thing. Okay, it may not be exactly what you're looking for, but I translate a story where somebody describes meeting the Rabbi, talking to the Rabbi, and the Rabbi said, and he writes, and the Rabbi giggled. Okay?
In English?
In English.
Okay.
Okay, when you say this in Hebrew, giggled is gichech. That's the word gichech. It's not coming out the same as giggled in English, because giggled in English, the way I get it, is not a derogatory. There's no derogatory.
No, it's very quaint.
It's like, right. In Hebrew.
Kind of cute almost.
Right. And it's okay. It's also a fitting word to say about the Rebbe. The Rebbe giggled, it's okay. Right. The Rebbe can giggle.
It's not disrespectful.
Right. It's not disrespectful for the Rebbe to use a term like this. But when you translate into Hebrew and you say Rebbe gichech, so first of all, it's not a word that really fits a Rebbe so much, but worse than that, it has a derogatory tone to it.
Like Hebrew. You're laughing at the person?
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's like,
which the Rebbe would never. I mean, that's so the opposite of the way the Rebbe treated everyone.
Right. Now, if you go with pure translation, it's the correct translation of the word. But if you go with the spirit of what was going on in the meeting, with the person meeting the Rebbe.
So what did you do?
I did smiled on this one. I sat on it for a long time, and I
why not laugh? Felt that was too much.
Yeah, because giggled once, it sounded like
giggles less than a laugh.
Yeah, I thought smiled was more appropriate. That's just how. But that's not the best example for what you asked for.
Okay, no, that is good though.
Okay,
that's very interesting.
Okay, well, here's an example of how one word.
No, but that's huge because I'll tell you something. Like somebody's reading this, some Israeli, and the story is probably a very nice story, whatever it is. You didn't even say what the story was about, and he could read that, and that one word could turn him off.
That's right.
Oh, Lubavitcher Rebbe was laughing at people.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly. So that was the consideration, and things like that. You have to be familiar with both languages. I can't do it necessarily from Hebrew to English. Even though my English is okay, but I don't think I would take such a job. But when I understand the English really well, and I have to play with the Hebrew, that I can do. So, but again, it takes more. This is an example that I say, it takes more than just the actual technical words. You have to get the feel of the language or what people mean when they say something, You just said the low-hanging fruit,
Right.
There's no such a thing in Hebrew. But I get what you're saying, It's a term.
Right.
It's an idiom.
Right,
exactly.
Well, how do you say it? Pitgam?
Yeah, pitgam.
Niv?
No, not niv. Pitgam, maybe. I don't know. To think about.
I was speaking to my kids the other day about the difference between mashal and militza.
Right.
Oh, you could probably help me here. I figured out what I thought it meant, the difference between mashal and militza. What's it?
What did you say?
I said mashal, and actually I added another one, and guzma.
Okay.
I said a mashal, you translate it as a metaphor.
Right.
Where you're comparing something to another thing, and usually comparing an unfamiliar thing to a familiar thing so the person could understand the unfamiliar thing by way of its association to a familiar thing. I said, militza is more a language thing, where you're using a phrase or a group of words that have meaning in an original context, but now that group of words is used in other contexts, and to the extent you may not even be aware of the original context. Like low-hanging fruit, you could probably work out. It's pretty easy. Oh, it's talking about a farm. You're picking fruit.
Right. It's like a mushal. It's a mushal.
But you're using it in a context where it's almost like a mushal. Right. But the militza, is when you have. I'll give you an example. Okay. There's a lashon pasuk, a wording from a verse, Chelek elika mimal. Chelek elika mimal, which, by the way, somebody complained to me, and he said, chasidus, I don't like chasidus, because the Alter Rebbe said that a soul is a part of God, and that's heretical. So I said, do you know, by the way, that Chelek elika mimal is not from the Alter Rebbe? So the Vilna Gaon also used that expression, and actually it predates the Alter Rebbe and the Vilna Gaon. I think the source is the Shafatal. The only addition of the Alter Rebbe is mamish. Right. Even in a body, it's still. But Chelek elika mimal is a lashon pasuk from Iyov, where he says, "This is my portion from God above." So Chelek elika mimal means my portion from God, like my destiny. This is my lot. My lot in life. So you're taking the group of words and you're using them in another context. A person who reads that, they don't know it's a lashon pasuk from Iyov. They don't know that that group of words originally appeared in Scripture. By the way, you know what was really amazing to me? When I actually started paying attention to the Haftarah and Shul. You know how many famous expressions are from there? I almost felt like the guy who the chassid sat down in shul, and he opened up a Shir HaShirim, a Song of Songs, and he said, "Who wrote this thing? He stole all of Likutei Torah."
That's good. This is good.
Ava Batanugim, Kirish Ve'esh, Ava Rabba, yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I think Melitza is also a little bit of a code word. Like mashal is using like a parable, Melitza requires a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more understanding of perspective that not everybody could get it.
So now you remind me of another thing, because this was a Shabbos table discussion I had with my kids. So I brought out a Rambam, Sefer Shoftim, Hilchos Malachim. And I was reading about Mashiach. At the very end of Rambam, he talks about Mashiach. And he says, V'gar zeiv im keves. Yeah. So he says there that this is a mashal. This is all. It doesn't literally mean that the nature of, it means a sheep will dwell, a wolf will dwell with a lamb. He says it doesn't literally mean that, because that would be miraculous, and the Mashiach is not a miraculous thing, at least not at first. He says it means that there will be world peace, that the aggressive countries will become docile. So it's a mashal. But then he uses another word. He says mashal v'chida. So my kid said, "What's the difference between a mashal and a chida?" So I didn't think about that. I thought about mashal, melitza, guzma. Then I realized, okay, what's a chida?
Chida is what's the word?
Riddle.
Riddle, right.
So functionally, what's a chida as opposed to a mashal? This is what I came up with when my kids asked me.
Okay.
It's a mashal that's supposed to be a little bit hard to figure out. Okay. The purpose of a mashal is to be easy to figure out. That's the whole purpose of it. A chida is supposed to make you work a little bit.
Requires work. Oh, that's nice. I like that.
A riddle is supposed to make you work. Yeah. Okay. So, bottom line. What do you want to tell us about? I don't know, what's your message for us? So what do we have to do to bring Mashiach? What's the bottom line?
Bottom line, I think that we started with Rashbi, started with Miron, and I think that we talked about spreading the well springs. We do believe very strongly that the secrets of the universe are found in the Torah, of course, but in the mystical elements of the Torah. Mm-hmm. We also do believe very strongly that those esoteric teachings that were not available to the mass public are available now to every single Jew, and in fact to every single person in the world. Mm-hmm. So what's now left to do is to make those teachings actually available, to bridge between the common language, the common culture, and those esoteric parts of Judaism. I think it's being done. I think that's what you do. That's what I try to do. Many people try to do it. But like you said in the beginning, there's so much more work to do. I think that more people, my message is for more people to look into this idea that basically whatever wounds and diseases, I'm talking about spiritual and mental disease, stress and trauma and all the crazy stuff that's going on, and people are walking around themselves trying to find solutions. Mm-hmm. And there's some great stuff going on. Trust me, I'm not putting anybody down. However, I think a lot more attention should be put into looking in those teachings. People like you and me, we should work harder to translate stuff, to try to explain it. And people who are consuming the information should be...
You're talking about inyonim nafshim.
Yeah.
Like
spiritual matters, inner work.
About the person, or to use another Lashon HaPasuk from Eov, Mibsari Echse Alaka. Right. Chasidus says you'll learn about high spiritual worlds, and really it's learning about yourself.
Right. I think you asked me before to give an example of the Zohar, and we talked about turning darkness into light. Yeah. I would say one more thing, and that is that the concept that the world consciousness is actually in our minds. It is there. In other words, we're looking at the world like we want to be more love. Right. Well, it's up to me. If my consciousness is going to be more full of love, then the people around me are going to be more full of love. We have the ability to change the world with our own minds. I totally believe that, but it requires a lot of inner work and a lot of study of the proper teachings.
Okay, so you're challenging everyone out there to study Pnimius HaTorah, the inner dimension of Torah, whether it's Kabbalah, Chasidus, and not just. And I want to again remind everyone, not just what you study, but you said when, at a good time, and also where.
Where?
So maybe you want to encourage people if
Yes.
they're ever.
I do want
How do you get from Ben Gurion to Miron? What's the
Miron?
quickest?
Actually, it became easier in recent years. The road system in Israel has improved tremendously. Well, we'll start with the Rebbe right here, like you mentioned in the beginning, coming to the Rebbe and hanging out by...
So you started the oil.
Started the oil. It's close to JFK.
You go to JFK.
And when you come to Israel, absolutely, check out Miron. There have been some, crazy things happening there. Unfortunately, it made headlines for negative reasons. But that's another turning darkness into light, So a lot of people heard of Miron in the last 2 years, not for positive reasons, but they heard about it. So if you heard about it, I'm saying to the people who hear it, if you heard about it...
And you haven't yet been there.
And you haven't been, come. And before you come, not everybody could come tomorrow, get a hold of some books of Pnimis Torah and check out the wisdom of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the way it is explained in chasidus.
That's beautiful. That's great. Amazing.
And you should come. You should come to Miron. You're invited.
Hashem,
You're invited.
I just don't know. Lag B'Omer, I'm very conflicted because the Rebbe said Lag B'Omer that Rashbi is at the aisle.
Right.
So
come some other time. Not on Lag B'Omer. Anyway, it's too crowded.
Any time but Lag B'Omer.
Exactly. Come when it's quiet. I come here also.
Right.
It's quiet now.
Right.
It's easier. So come when nobody's there.
You're getting out of here before Yud Shvat. Before okay.
Before all the...
Okay. Amazing. Shakayach. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really, really amazing. Thank you.
Thanks.